who really doesn't need any introduction. I understand that our speaker is the man in the know. He is apparently also someone who has the House of Lords quaking in their boots to hear his words of wisdom tomorrow. And the reason that he does that is, he explained to me that them that can do it, them that can't write about it. So in that spirit, it gives me great pleasure to invite Roy Lilley, who is a writer, expert commentator, broadcaster, former chairman of a trust, and if I went on, I would spend a lot more time giving all of your background.
It's nothing like a good introduction, and that was nothing like... No, very true. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for having me. I just need to do a couple of bits of admin. You'll see that there's a bar across the way there, and I think the organisers felt quite rightly that it's probably better you buy your own booze than we get it on prescription. So. You'll see here on the table there's some fabulous award trophies. I think we call them trophies, which you can get on eBay. But actually, you can also get one if you've done something really good about innovation. And tonight, unfortunately, I won't be here to see it, but they're the awards for people who've innovated and actually made things happen. And so much innovation is not scalable. So much innovation doesn't really ever see the light of day. But these are for innovators who've done some really good stuff and have made it work. And so congratulations to whoever you are. Do they know who the winners are?
Yes, we do know who the winners are.
You do know?
They know who they are.
They know who they are. Okay, right. Well, congratulations. I'm sorry I can't say. Originally I had intended to, but there was a bit of a fracas in the House of Lords over the last couple of days, and I've got to go and I'm not quite sure why they want me to go and talk to them. I should just give them a bollocking. But I'm going to the House of Lords tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and I can't get a bloody train in this 21st century country of ours. I can't get to the House of Lords by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning unless I drive home tonight. So anyway, that's my explanation. I'm also really rather nervous about speaking to an audience like this, because I'm sort of slightly out of my depth with the deans of the educational establishment here and so many highly qualified people. I feel a bit like Albert Einstein. Einstein, of course, was the father of the theory of relativity, E = mc squared. And when he first came up with that theorem, it was in the 1920s. The media was not as prescient as it is now. No one knew who he was. And actually, he used to go and speak on university campus, and the public used to go and pay to listen to him speak. And he did that throughout the UK. He also did it in America. He did a coast-to-coast tour talking about the theory of relativity, and he was driven from campus to campus across America, delivering his speech. And halfway across America, he said to the guy who was driving him, his chauffeur, he said, "I bet you're fed up with listening to this speech. You must have heard it God knows how many times." And the chauffeur said, No, he said, "I'm not fed up with it at all." He said, "It's very interesting." He said, "But I probably do know it off by heart now." And Einstein said, "Well, I'm fed up with it. I tell you what, tonight, why don't we smoke?" So Einstein put on the chauffeur's uniform, and the chauffeur put on Einstein's cardigan, and off they arrived at the campus because no one knew who they were. He was welcomed as a great hero, and the Einstein chauffeur, dressed as Einstein, stood at the podium and delivered Einstein's lecture on the theory of relativity flawlessly. And it all went very well until question time. And somebody called Muir Gray stood up and asked some bloody awkward question about the weight of matter or whatever it. But unfazed, Einstein's chauffeur, dressed as Einstein, rounded on the questioner and said, "I cannot believe my having delivered such an erudite speech that you'd ask me such a stupid question. Why, even my chauffeur knows the answer." So I'm not quite sure what my brief is tonight. I think you want me to talk a bit about what's happening in the health service and the reforms. I'm sure you're all briefed as well as I am on the reforms. It's the riots, I think, are probably the most worrying thing, the possibility of social unrest and all the rest of it. You know, was it a flash in the pan? Are they more serious or not? Prime Minister, of course, thought it was very serious, and he stood in Downing Street speaking about it. And if you look very carefully over his shoulder, Samantha, where's the flat screen camera? It's been nicked, yes. People ask me, of course, about the future of the NHS. And any of you have read Tony Blair's memoirs? It's not the sort of thing most people admit to. It's the sort of thing you read on your... Dr. Lamont has read it, yes, thank you. Yeah, but she read it on her Kindle, so we couldn't see the cover. That's the great thing. When are they going to do Playboy magazine on the Kindle? That would be really... SARS of Playboy we go through. Anyway, Tony Blair, of course, he said in his memoirs that he didn't push the NHS reforms far enough or fast enough, and he thought it was super. Then we had Gordon Brown, who thought it was super duper, gave us all the money that we wasted. Now we've got Andrew Lansbury, who thinks it's pooper. So I mean, that seems to me to be where we are with the reforms. I just, would anybody now, Dr. Lamont, who has 2 degrees, anybody else got 2 degrees? No? Have you got 2? Oh, shit, right now. I mean, I just think it's so vulgar. She's got 2 PhDs, shouldn't we? Anybody else got 2 PhDs? Yes, no? I mean, he's just like the sort of medallion man of the education. It's just so vulgar. But I think one of them's in the appreciation of art, so you can shut your mouth for 5 minutes. She may need an operation to do that. Anyway, can anybody tell me who painted this picture? Anybody take a punt on who the artist was for this picture? There's this prize if you can get this right. It's a vasectomy. You can give it to a friend. It might come in handy, so to speak. Anybody? Come on, wake up. You all right? Anybody tell me who made that? No? Anybody? No?
Lilley.
Lilley. Who?
Lilley.
Sorry?
Lilley.
Miller. Would you stand up, please?
I would have said that.
Would you stand up, please?
Right.
Would you stand up? Sit down, you're wrong. I tell you, it is interesting. Actually, it was painted by Pablo Picasso in 1897. He painted it when he was 17. I don't know what it's like where you are, but where I live, we've got kids at 17 that can't write. Never mind paint like this. But the interesting thing about it is the male figure is his father, the female figure in the bed is his mum. His mum and dad were both artists. He painted that when he was 17. And I mean, you know, we've had a bit of a laugh, but actually it could be Millet, couldn't it? It could be someone of that sort of genre, the brush strokes, the handling of the colour. Imagine a 17-year-old bringing back that from school and saying, "This is what I did today, Mum." You'd stick it with a magnet on the fridge, wouldn't you? Just such a fantastic picture. Anyway, Science and Charity, it's called. It's a woman dying of cholera. You can see the doctor sitting there, not able to do anything, not a lot has changed. And then, of course, there is the nun there who's sweeping up the child about to become orphaned. I just thought I'd get the dinner off to a nice start. But it is a fantastic picture. And I just want you to bear that in mind while we have a look at this one. Does anybody know this one? Anybody seen this picture? This is, yes, you've certainly, huge, isn't it? Overwhelmingly powerful, wonderful picture. Yes, it's Diego Velázquez's Las Meninas. It's the Little Princesses. And it's a fantastic picture, but it is not what you think it is. The picture is 10 feet tall, it's 9 feet wide, it's painted in the fabulous rich colours, and these are the Las Meninas here, these are the 2 princesses, it's of the royal court. And this figure here, this cavalier figure, is actually Velázquez. And what this picture is a self-advertisement. It's a self-portrait. But the things that are around it are much more important. So we've got the Chamberlain in the doorway. There's a wonderful story about the Chamberlain, which I haven't got time to go into. And we've got the richness of the colours. Bear in mind, this was in the 1600s. You couldn't go out to W.H. Smith's and buy a few acrylics. All of these colours, particularly the blue and the purples. This says this is a very rich picture. Big, massive dog here to signify the wealth of the court. It's a painting of the Royal Court. This is Velasquez here, another huge a canvas in progress. But here's the trick. In the middle here, what looks like a painting is actually a mirror. Now, can you imagine how expensive a mirror was in the 1600s? And reflected in the mirror is the King and Queen of Spain. We're put in the picture, in the role of the King and Queen of Spain looking in. This is Velasquez not painting the princesses. This is Velasquez painting the King and Queen of Spain. This is Velasquez saying, I am very important. I paint huge paintings with rich colours of very important people. Wow. Okay, you got that? You're with me so far? Right, not too complicated for you. Right, okay, have a look at this one. Picasso's Las Meninas. Incredible, isn't it? Picasso did a lot of this. So what have we got here? It's a monochrome picture, not rich colours. The sausage dog here is replacing the great mastiff. Chamberlain's still there. Velasquez is painted with two faces, looking reflectively at himself. It's a motif for the conceit of the artist and Velasquez. And here, the image in the mirror is replaced with a picture of a clown, which is a political statement from Picasso. Of course, had very strong political views, and we all know about his involvement in the Spanish Civil War. So this is Picasso doing that to the art establishment. Two takes of the same picture, really, I think, very interesting. And I wanted to use that for my You know, I was born before the NHS. The script says, wait while the audience gasps. Okay, we'll do that again. You know, I was born before the NHS. I love it. What a great audience. And you don't have to be good looking, you just have to be a great audience. I was born before the National Health Service. My dad was a window cleaner, my mum was a shop worker. I was born in a single room at the East End of London. My mum lost her first baby, so she was a woman at risk. My dad had to save up the equivalent of 3 weeks' wages to have a midwife come in and help my mum deliver me. She was 12 hours in labour. She said it was worth every minute. And she nearly died having me. So you can imagine, I was born on the 23rd of June 1946, if you just want to make a little note of that, 23rd of June, you know, like whiskey, pairs of socks, anything. You know. 23rd of June 1946. On the 5th of July 1948, the then Labour government nationalised what was a fragmented health service provided by the private sector and the third sector, as we call it today. It was dysfunctional, it didn't work, and it was costing a fortune, no one could afford it, and so they nationalised it, and we now have the NHS. You know what I'm going to say next, don't you? You know where I'm going. But, so you can understand, I think, the concerns that there are, people of my parents' age and probably my age, of what is going to happen to the NHS, what is the future of the health service. And that's the kind of worry, I think, that people have, and all the concerns, and why we've had such a whole palaver in the House of Lords, and I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. So now we've got this. At the top we have the Department of Health, which remains accountable for the NHS, and each year will publish what's called a mandate, which is a kind of shopping list that people on the commissioning board will have to do. The commissioning board will be run by Sir David Nicholson, who now runs the Department of Health. Did you see the job advertised? I must have missed it. Beneath that, we've got the PCTs and the SHA clusters, which were going and now remaining, and you mustn't call them a regional health authority. If you do that, you get your bottom smacked and you go to bed without your tea. Clinical commissioning groups are then beneath that. Clinical commissioning group, they can be a consortium of 2 practices or 150 practices. Doesn't matter what size they are, there's no legislation around that. Then we've got local authorities, health and wellbeing boards, and local authorities, I think, will play an increasing part in what the clinical commissioning groups can deliver, because they have to have their annual plans signed off by the local authorities. And if they don't like it, they can complain to the commissioning board. So they will have a big power of sanction as that develops. Then we've got CQC and Health Watch, who are looking after the financial trusts and Freudian slip. The foundation must stop doing their foundation trusts. CQC, of course, are the inspectorate for the health service. They're the people who tick the boxes and turn up and count the dead. Then on the left-hand side here we have Monitor, whose duty is not to, is or isn't to promote competition. It depends how you read the bill. And then Clinical Senates, which I think you might be interested in, because I think there'll be some quite important educational input into that. So that's what it looks like. Just to be helpful, I've planned out these. Bear in mind we're replacing PCTs and SHAs because they're too bureaucratic. And these are the levels of bureaucracy. I've got up to 8 levels of bureaucracy. And just to be helpful, I've planned out the communication strategies of these organisations, which, as you can see, is very clear. And as I'm using a sort of an artistic motif, I thought it was more like a Jackson Pollock. Some of you may think the whole thing is a Jackson Pollock. Look, none of this really matters. What I really wanted to talk to you tonight is about what you're doing and in the innovation sector and what is important. What does the NHS really need? What are we really looking for? It doesn't matter how the NHS is organised. The GPs are well on their way to reinventing PCTs. Don't worry about it. We're going to spend £3 billion getting there, but it'll all look very much the same. But this is the important bit. This is Office of Health Economics. Now, I want you to ignore what's in the circle because that's the World War and the figures were distorted. But if you have a look at where the 2 yellow lines are, there's a graph that's going up, and that's what I call the coffin, right? The gap, that gap's the coffin. And I want you to remember the number 17. So what have we got here? Well, look, what we've got here, this is 1950, and that's when the average working man died in 1950. He died when he was about 68 years old. That's why pensions made such a lot of sense in those days, and why pensions don't make any sense at all now. And on the right-hand side, on your right-hand side, that's 2011, where an average working man might die just when he's in his 80s. The 17 is the important bit, because the man will die in his 80s of something that was pre-diagnosed 17 years earlier. How does it work? Hello, Bill, how are you? I'm fine. Still playing golf? Yeah, I've had to stop doing a bit of it though because I didn't feel too well. I went and saw the old dog and I got blood pressure. Can you imagine it? Me, blood pressure. Fit as a butcher's dog, blood pressure. Anyway, I'm all right, I'm on a pill. You see him a couple of years later, maybe, I don't know, and you say, how are you? He said, well, I hadn't been too well. I thought the blood pressure was playing me up. Do you know what? I'm diabetic. Can you imagine it? Me, diabetic, fit as a butcher's dog, bit of blood pressure, but I'm diabetic. But it's okay, I'm on a pill. And so it goes on, and we go through diabetes, we go through obesity, we get into cardiovascular problems, we get a bypass, and suddenly this guy is costing us a bloody fortune. And this is where we need the innovation. This is where we need to bring to bear new ideas in dealing with people with these kind of long-term conditions. And what about this? Now, any of you ladies got one of these at home? See anything you recognise? This is our other big problem. Now, I don't know whether or not you've all been ensconced today in your conference, but the government has released its new strategy today on obesity. Have any of you had a chance to see it? No? Because I'd like you to calibrate my take on it. What it's actually saying is we need to tell the public that if they eat too much, they'll get fat. That's what it says. Honestly, I kid you, that's what it says. So there you are. What about that? Well, look, this is how it works, isn't it? You get up in the morning and you're late and you run through the shower and you have a black coffee and then you get to the railway station and fortunately Costa Coffee are on the railway station and you have a nice big latte and one of those free trade nut things, you know? And that's fine to eat the free trade nut, because anything with free trade in it doesn't have calories. And then you get to the office and you say, God, how is it for you? Did you see Spooks last night on the telly? You know, you do all that business. And then you say, oh, me a cup of coffee, you have a coffee, and then you get into the hobnobs because you're starving. And then lunchtime comes, you say, you're going down for, yeah, I'm going to go down to Pret a Manger. Okay, fine, what should I have? A wrap. I'll have a wrap because it's low calorie. Yes, of course it is. Fill it with mozzarella cheese. Lovely. So you eat that. A can of Coke, perfect. Then you come up in the afternoon and you eat a whole bag of Kettle Crisps because they're just irresistible, aren't they? And then you have a glass of water because, you know, I'm dehydrating. On the way home, you say, do you fancy a drink on the way home? Yeah, let's go to Giovanni's. So you go to Giovanni's wine bar and he says, hello ladies, you want a Giovanni's big one? And we say, oh yes, I have a big one, Giovanni. And so he pours you out half a bottle of white wine and then you buy one each and then you go home. When you go home, you undo the fridge door and you take out Marks and Spencer's meal. Now the great thing about Marks and Spencer's food is it doesn't have any calories in it because it's only for posh people. Marks and Spencer's food, Waitrose, all of those places, none of the food in those supermarkets has calories because it's only for posh people. Personally, I like Tesco's. The reason I like Tesco's is it keeps the riffraff out of Waitrose. Anyway, so you put your frozen meal into the microwave oven, you wait for it to ping, and then you use the most fabulous, the most famous invention known to man. This is real innovation. It's the screw top bottle of wine. You do not have to use one of those hernia-inducing things anymore. So, then you have your glass of wine while it's in the pinging machine, and you think, I'll just have another one, and then you eat the meal, and then you think, oh, I've opened the bottle now, I finish it, you go to bed. Total calorie intake for the day, 3,000. Actual requirement, probably sedentary work, under about 2,000. It's a lifestyle thing, isn't it? This is the problem. This is where we need the innovation. This is where we need a new look at our health services. In 1969, a very famous public health doctor called Thomas McCure, spoke about the challenges of public health. He said in terms, look, you know what? Governments have done pretty well everything they can do with public health. He talked about immunisation, clean water, adult literacy. He said the rest is up to the extent to which governments need to interfere in the lives of ordinary people. He was the first person to talk about the nanny state. And he talked about three things. He said smoking, diet and exercise are the three things that governments need to address. He talked about that in 1969. How do we address that? Where is the innovation? Where does this take us? These are the areas. It's not about reorganising the NHS in who does what and who commissions it and all the structures and all the rest of it. That's the least of our worries. We know what will happen there. What we don't know what will happen is if we do not innovate around the real problems that are facing the NHS, these issues of diabetes. And of course today we've had just another horrendous story about how we look after old people in our hospitals. The CQC paid unannounced visits. Normally they turn up and count the dead. This time they turned up and counted the dehydrated. And they've looked at 100 hospitals and 1 in 5 of them is probably illegal in terms of the quality of the care that they're offering. And does that make them bad places? No. Does it make nurses stupid? No. Does it make managers stupid? No. But it does create a problem, because when you've got a medical ward of 4 or 5 bays of 8 people in each bay, and you've got 5 nurses on a ward, and half of the elderly people need to be fed, feeding someone takes half an hour. So if you've got to feed 12 people, you've got 6 hours feeding time on a ward with 5 nurses. You can't do it. This is where we need to innovate. It's not about the hospital on the hill and the machines that go beep. It's about the real problems facing the NHS: obesity, dementia, and an aging population and long-term conditions. This is where we need our best brains to be working. And I just want to leave you with this thought. This is a grocery store. Now, I told you I'm an extremely old person. I left school when I was 15. I left on the day that I was 15. I put my satchel and my blazer in a bin and said to my mum, I've left. And she said, you can't leave, you have to wait till the end of term. I said, I've done it. And she said, well, you better get a job by the time your dad gets home. You can see my mother was wedded to education. So I went and got a job as a butcher's boy in a grocery store. And it looked just like this. It was mahogany, it was marble, and yes, the shop assistants did actually wear little bonnets and white overalls. And it was just amazing. And you see these chairs here. There were those kind of chairs. And it was my job to take the chair, and when customers like Mrs. Fulcart came in, she was a cow, but it was my job to get her a chair and sit down, and she would give me a list, and I would run round and I would get what it is she wanted. It would then be put on the counter, and a big bloke called Harry who could add up in his head. Wow. We'd write it all down, she would sign for it, I'd put it in a box, and if I got home before she did, she would give me threepence. Now threepence was a lot of money when you earned 1 and 6 a week, so I always got there. Then it changed. Then we had these. We had self-service. Now self-service was an entirely different thing to the kind of thing that we have now. Self-service was actually just that, a basket, and you went round and you collected the stuff up, the kind of job that I did for Mrs. Fulcart. Then you still gave it to a bloke called Harry, who had it up in his head. Wow. And then NCR came along, and barcodes and all the rest of it, and now we've got a thing called Kylie, who sits there all day going, beep, 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 and at the end of it all says, do you want a bag? No, I'm going to juggle it to the car. Then, of course, now we've got this self-checkout. Now, do you like these? Do you like the self-checkout? No? Put your hand up if you like them. Put your hand up if you don't like them. Put your hand up if you haven't been shopping for 20 years. That's all the blokes. Absolutely, yeah. Well, you get divorced. Right. Now, look, I don't know about you, but I've got a sat-nav in my car, and it's called Beatrice. Now, I'll do anything for Beatrice. I love it when I go wrong. I love it when she says, please do a U-turn when it's safe to do it. Naughty boy. Whip me, beat me, call me trash. I love it. I deliberately go wrong so Beatrice will talk to me. I just love Beatrice. On the other hand, when you go to these things and it says, unexpected item in the bagging tray, do you know what it is? It's a fat cow called Brenda, chained up inside the box. She has a big hairy mole and hates men. And she singles you out for humiliation and ridicule in front of children who know how to do it and you don't. But I tell you, I've been working recently with a well-known supermarket. I can't tell you which one it is because every little helps. And they take this kind of thing very seriously, and they've got in-store video footage where the Kylies have got nothing to do and people are queuing to use the Brendas. It's amazing, and the ones that, you are absolutely right, people love to do it because people like to be in charge. We need to remember that when we're innovating as well. People love to be in charge. And so we have this. Now, one of the things that they talk about in this well-known supermarket, that I can't tell you which one it is something that I think this is a jaw dropper, okay? This is a white knuckle ride. I'm going to tell you something that is so contrary to everything you've ever been taught and believe in that you'll die. So if you are of a nervous disposition, now's the time to undo all tight clothing about the neck, chest and waist and lie in the recovery position. I know that's later, isn't it? Yes, right. Okay, this is very tricky, right? Do you know what they say? They look for ways in which the customer can add value to the business. Wow. Just think about that for a moment. Ways in which the customer can add value to the business. What do we think about? How do we add value to the patient's experience? We've got it all wrong. If we're really innovative, we need to think about what these very famous and successful organizations do when they look after their customers. How can the customer add value to the business? Well, things like this. I think this is the future. I was up in Scotland just recently where they're using telecare and telemonitoring and all kinds of fantastic stuff. Even stroke patients do recovery at home on a special television channel that's dedicated to them so they can see it. This kind of thing. I have seen data after data where patients like to look after themselves. They really do. They don't actually want to go to a blood pressure clinic, which is conveniently on a Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. They actually want to do it themselves. My mum, she's 90, she's a fantastic lady, very doughty and all the rest of it, but she does need a bit of maintenance, and I have to sometimes say to, sometimes take her over to the clinic to get her blood pressure checked. And I said to the nurse, look, I said, I'll buy a blood pressure machine in Boots and I'll do it and I'll email you with the answer. And she said, we don't do email. We don't. She's got a BlackBerry. No, little in-job BlackBerry. We don't do email. For Christ's sake, we don't do email. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. So the areas that I think sometimes we look in the wrong direction to innovate. How do we innovate around letting the customer feel the charge? Can the customer add value to the NHS? This is a challenge for you. How does the patient add value to their own experience by doing the things that the little boy first did in the grocery store all those years ago, that doctors and nurses are now doing, that patients can do for themselves? This is where we need the innovation. This is where the costs are. And if you look at it, this is a survey in North Yorkshire, 96% loved the idea and 98% were highly satisfied with how it all works. And while we're on percentages, I'm just going to leave you with this percentage. This is a magic percentage. It's brand new. It's off the Department of Health website. It was this week, and it's the percentage of people who are either satisfied or highly satisfied with a recent episode of treatment or experience with the NHS. 92%. I think that's fantastic. And what I'd like you to do, if you all would you all stand up, please? Okay. And will you all face that way? Okay. And will you give the person in front of you a pat on the back and say, well done? And will you all stay standing, please? Because I mentioned my mum a few moments ago. Unfortunately, I can't stay with you. I've got to rush back for reasons I've explained. But when I drive back, I'll be ringing her from the car, and she'll say, how'd you get on? I said, oh, it's fine. It's really met some really nice people, doing some interesting stuff. Had a good time. She said, fine. She'll say, did you make them laugh? And I said, yeah, we had a laugh. And she said, but did you make some serious points? And I'll say, yeah, of course I did, Mum. She said, good. And this is the question she'll ask me next, and it's your opportunity to make an old lady very happy. Because she'll say, did they give you a standing ovation?